Hello, and welcome to the Digital Workspace Works podcast. I'm Ryan Purvis, your host, supported by our producer Heather Bicknell. In this series, you'll hear stories and opinions from experts in the field, stories from the front lines, the problems they face and how they solved them, the areas they focused on from technology, people and processes, to the approaches they took that will help you to get to the grips with the digital workspace inner workings.
So we did this trip to Cape Town, and I thought it would be nice to talk about each place and what I liked about each place and what we did there whilst working. Cape Town was just one of those things where it was in my mind when I was thinking about this, and I'd actually duffed it because I didn't take my laptop with me. I just took my iPad with me. And I got into trouble with my wife because she kept saying you should just take in your laptop so you could have worked and we could have stayed and enjoyed the hotel for 4 days longer, which is a mistake I made, and we won't do it again. I'll carry the devices with me, because with two kids, they're still quite young. There are kids clubs, and the hotels we stayed in a very nice hotel called Spear. And they had a very nice kids club with two lovely ladies that ran it. And they really, because we were there for so long, they really bent over backwards to make it a good experience. So there was no doubt in my mind that if I'd said to them, we stay in Thursday and Friday, can you look after the kids? They literally would have come pick the kids up from the room to take them to the kids club for us, because that's how involved they were with the kids. And then we would have the benefit of this beautiful wine farm with wonderful views every night after work, as opposed to Joburg, which is a whole bunch of it's trees and buildings, but it's not Cape Town. I think talking through each place would be nice. The biggest thing that I struggle with these places, which you don't know till you get there, is how good is the internet? Because I don't know if you ever looked at how much data you spend on Teams, but because everything's video, you're looking at 40, 50 gigs a month of bandwidth being used, or data being consumed. So you are a bit beholden to where you're going and what they've got.
Yeah, I mean, that's the you kind of live or die by the Wi-Fi or internet strength with the whole digital nomad thing.
Yeah, so a couple of things that I've learned the hard way is you've usually got to get a local SIM card where you can either load on. So South Africa's got a network called RAIN, RAIN, and you can pay the equivalent of $20 a month and get unlimited 4G data. Now that's fine, provided they're in your network coverage area. So when I was in Cape Town, the hotel we're staying in, they didn't have that. They didn't have coverage there, so it wouldn't have worked for me there. But the hotel did have a business center, so I could have sat in the business center all day long. And then you would plug in directly to the thing. But most other countries I've been to, I mean, Cameroon had fiber long before South Africa did. Kenya used to have fiber long before South Africa did. So there, the connectivity there is much better than here. I was at that stage, so that always helps.
I guess another thing that I wanted to ask you about. So when I was researching the digital nomad stuff, the Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week seemed to be a source of inspiration for a lot of people, or kind of one of the maybe foundational books of this movement. So, I know this is a book you've referenced a few times, so I'm assuming it's one you know pretty well, I guess. What's your, first of all, what kind of stuff does he say about being a digital nomad? And then is it something you'd recommend people read if they're interested in that lifestyle?
I think it's a good book for anyone to read anyway. It's very much like Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Everyone should read that book. Everyone should read the 4-Hour Work Week. And it's not because you'll do your whole work week in 4 hours. That's just, it's just a bad title, which Tim Ferriss acknowledges. But what it does, there's two mental shifts that it pushes on you. One is this: you need to be in the office every day, 9 to 5. It's taken a pandemic, but I think most people would say for most jobs, and I'm not saying all jobs, because clearly there are jobs where you need to be face to face, you can get away with doing your job remotely. Now that's the first mind shift. The second mind shift is that you have a choice whether you want to save up your whole life to retire with money, using your pension or whatever to do the things that you want to do, or do the things you want to do while you're doing things. So when you get older, you've done all the things you wanted to do. You may not have the big retirement savings, but this is part of the book as well. But at least you've traveled, you experienced things, etc. So there are big shifts to make. And what he does in his book is he goes through almost a how-to manual on how to approach this. And one of those key things is if you wanted to, he calls them mini retirements. So instead of waiting for the big retirement at the end, you retire a little bit at the beginning, all the time. And he sort of gave examples of he went from this place to this place to this place to this place and did these things. He was a ballroom dancer. He did some martial arts competition, and he sort of explained some of the tips and tricks to how he got a good deal or negotiated something. But really, what he talks about at the very beginning is, and I haven't read the book in a couple of years, so this shows you how much it's stuck in my head, is you got to do the calculation to what your expenses are that you need to generate revenue for to cover your costs. So you know how much you need to consult or whatever it is to earn money to pay for those things. And he came out of running a sports nutrition business where he was working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. And he explains how he had to break his own cycle, empower his staff to make decisions, and also outsource some of his decisions so that he wasn't making all those decisions. And then also on the revenue side, how he worked out how much he needed so that he could go and do all these mini retirements. And okay, look, he's fast forward now. He's a very wealthy man. He makes about $3 million a year just on his podcast. So he's cracked it in a thing, but he also did a lot of investing along the way. He also, if you listen to his podcast and read his other books, he's got a very good way of breaking down complex things into simple things. And what the 4-hour work week kind of talks to on that front is outsourcing things that are not a good use of your time. So one thing that I'm thinking about at the moment is there's some very basic stuff I do on the podcast that I could probably pay someone a very small amount per hour to do, which frees up my time to do other stuff. And that's kind of these things. It actually ties into Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Effective People, or something like that. I can't remember what the book exactly called, but it's knowing the value of your time and using it appropriately. The other thing with Ferriss's book is he uses he outsources a lot of work to virtual assistants in Asia. And I've seen how that's actually changed now that you can get a virtual assistant in any country in the world, because I think people on the other side of that have realized that they're willing to work on a part-time basis to do something for someone else, but they don't want a job. They don't want the grind of being fettered to one company, but they can do 60 hours a month for 60 different clients.
I watched there's just a digital nomad, 25-minute documentary on YouTube that followed these two people. And one of them, I think he was a Belgian man, but he was working without a contract for some guy who was really big into crypto. And so the sort of shift work he would do for him was just look at the ICO, the initial coin offering for just tracking different cryptocurrencies in an Excel sheet, for this guy. And that would be, it is it's the similar thing with the assistant kind of work, doing this sort of task that someone else has obviously decided they're going to outsource. And then that gave the Belgian guy the opportunity to have at least like that steady income stream as part of what he used to support his lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example, because there's, if you look at your task list every day, there's going to be stuff that you should actually systematize and let someone else do it. That I'm not saying is less intelligent or anything like that, but they are a value proposition to you to do it for you. Because some of these virtual assistants, the one guy that was doing some work for me has an MBA and a doctorate, so he's definitely not an idiot. And I asked him to work out a financial model on something for me, which if I had spent the time doing, I think I asked, and this is one of the things in the book is you're going to ask someone to do something for you, set a time limit, set a budget, whatever it is. This should only take you 5 hours. And you get some good results out of that, because you don't have these open-ended problems where someone charges by the hour and they do 10 hours and you're only meant to spend 5. But he did something for me in 4 hours, which answered a question for me, which if I had wasted the time doing, it would have probably taken me months to get to it, because it would always be a lower priority item. Mm-hmm. But it was still something I wanted the answer to. So it was bugging me, but I couldn't get to it because I had other stuff to do, which was more important. But I paid someone, I think it was about $50 or something like that. And he came up with a great model, and it answered my question. And it got me past something that I was trying to make a decision on.
Now, was this someone you knew, or did you use one of the services like Fiverr, or I don't remember the names of the different ones, but they're all those. I used
a service, and actually, what's a nice benefit of doing this exercise is often you sit with something you need to get done, and you're not entirely sure what it is. But in order to get someone from the service, you actually have to go through the brain dump of what do I actually want, and what's the output that I want. So why do I want this? How do I want it to look? And what the output is, which is the Simon Sinek golden circles. But I used it's not Fiverr, it's the other one, Upwork. I used Upwork. And you basically post a job, you get a whole bunch of responses, and you make a decision from there, and you just pick someone. So the person that did the last one for me was based in Kenya. And what I quite liked about that is if he does the work, he uses an app, and the app takes screenshots of what he's doing all day long. Whenever he's logging time to your thing, and you can go look through the screenshots. And he had, and he had actually had some other stuff on the screen. So I challenged him on that. And he said, "Oh yeah, but I spent 2 minutes on that, but I'll give you back 1 hour." I said, "That's fine." But there's a level of trust that you build with someone. Mm-hmm. So the next time I use him, I know that he's honest. So I won't worry about the bill so much. And then it's just a short-term contract. It's 5 hours, 4 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is. Or you could have, you can have apps built using those sort of services. But I think the point, going back to why would you do this and the 4-hour work week is, it's very easy to put your money away to build up a nest egg. But not reach that point, because you might be injured, you might die, you might get crippled, whatever it is, and you can't actually do those retirement things. And I think the mini retirements make a lot more sense, because you're able now to do these things. When you get to 60, 70, 80, you can't go and play golf every day. You can't go mountain climbing necessarily. You could try. I'm not saying you shouldn't try, but physically you may not be able anymore. So that was really the thing for me about that book that really sort of pushed us into more experiences and stuff. So, we've traveled every year, including through COVID, because we're in South Africa now. And now that we're stuck in South Africa, we're doing things in South Africa that we couldn't have done from the UK, because the time you need to do it means that you're flying out here, then you still have to go and do the trip. Now that we're here, we're going to do the trips because we've got the time, which is great. That's why Cape Town, Durban, Nisa will be the next one. Hermanus, go see the whales, all part of the plan.
Sounds nice. I wish a lot of this was just the way, we as a society decided everyone deserved to have, to live and experience, and that that was just kind of built into our systems, but it's not. So you have to kind of hack it, in your own way. And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's certainly, I think there's a reason why a lot of people from my generation and Gen Z are attracted to, having these digital nomad lifestyles or doing things differently, and maybe sacrificing some of that security net for later, which is that a lot of people don't have, there's not a lot of confidence that it will be there anyway when we're old, that we'll have Social Security to draw from, that, the climate will be habitable, and that we can see, all the great places that we could visit now, that they'll even look the same, by the time we would reach retirement age, or still be around, or, we can travel to. So, I mean, it certainly doesn't seem the best model to wait until, you're in your 60s to start experiencing the world. I mean, I've seen a lot of retired people who are doing that now, and they're so happy. And it's just, I mean, I hope one day that I can do the same, but definitely don't want to wait until then to do any sort of traveling. At least in the US, it is a really big thing. Like, a lot of people just haven't traveled internationally, and then they do all of that once they built up, that nest egg in their 60s, 70s and whatnot.
Look, I'm not saying you shouldn't wait till you've retired to go and do these things, but to, from our point of view, we've enjoyed a lot of things before having the kids. We did a lot of traveling, and we did a lot of things that it put us, in some senses into a bit of debt to do it, but we've explored these things. So when the pandemic hit and we said, geez, this travel thing's gonna be an issue, we're like, well, thank God we've traveled. Imagine you're waiting to, because I mean, we were planning a trip to Boston this year for my 40th to go watch the Red Sox. So we'd be in theory Boston now, or next week at least, and we could do it for my 50th. Now I'm not fazed by it, but if we hadn't traveled and we planned the trip, it would have been devastating to not be able to go and do it. Now it's kind of like, well, we could do it another time. It's not a big deal, because I think being where we are now actually is better. But I think that's one of the things that this mind shift is that you've got to take the opportunities when you can, and not keep putting it off. And being able to work anywhere makes that much easier, because you can be connected, you can do stuff. You got to set boundaries. You got to have some rules about it. You can't just, it's not willy-nilly. And I mean, I know that there are organizations that are forcing their staff, even if they're working from home, to designate their home as their office so that they can't work somewhere else. But I just think that ruins the productivity, again, the motivation, because if you motivate people and say, look, you're an adult, be professional. Okay. And I mean, I'm guilty of doing stupid things like joining phone calls in the car, where it's noisy and people can't hear me and all the rest of it. I think that's a bad habit of mine that I have to break. But sometimes, you're out to go pick up the kids because the kid's sick, and you're on the way back and the call's starting and you have to be in the call because you're important. It's your call, and you're affecting a lot of other people if you're not there, and you have to join from the car. So I think there's a level of flexibility all around. Contributions can come in many forms and factors. They don't always have to be perfectly behind a desk. Some people work late at night and some people work early in the morning. It's just, how your body works sometimes.
I think one good thing to come out of, all of this is that since there are more employers making that shift and realizing, we can, be more flexible with our employees, and they're still getting the same amount done, if not more, that people are starting to look at that as not just a benefit of who they work for, but more of a requirement. Like, who wants to work for the employer? I don't remember who it is, but there's at least one company who, is it PwC? I don't remember. I think they have like webcams or some sort of tracking software for their employees where they have to justify, even if it's just like taking going to the restroom and coming back, they have to justify why they were away from their desk. And of course, there's like keystroke software that, and other ways that people are really granularly trying to quantify whatever, it's really impossible to fully quantify productivity, but these are the ways, staring at your screen and typing a lot is still valued by some companies.
Yeah. And I think that's, an organization like that, I wouldn't want to work in. And I've been lucky, we've had the tools to do all that kind of stuff. It's one of the reasons you and I, know each other. And the way has never been, okay, look, you are going to have cases where you want to check someone's actually working. You pay someone you pay someone a salary to deliver on something. They're not delivering on something. You want to make sure it's because they are, there's a good reason, not that they are, freeloading. And I have been involved in those discussions sometimes and had to do some investigation. It is the nature of the beast sometimes, but holistically, the whole organization hasn't been built that way. In fact, the best way we've looked at that, or the best view on that we've had, is the tools we're providing you up to scratch. So is the laptop working sufficiently, or the desktop working sufficiently so you can do your job? Do you have enough CPU? Do you have enough memory? Is your disk fast enough? All those sorts of things. So the entire user experience has been a factor. It's probably one of the reasons why I'm so frustrated with Windows, because I've had to look at it for hundreds of thousands of users and always finding challenges with it. But I think that's the view to have it, is that, your contribution to an organization, it's an agreement between you and the employer that you're there to do a job. But they're not there to tell you how to do the job, because if they were there to tell you how to do the job, then they didn't need you in the first place, because they could just hire anybody to tell them how to do it. They're looking for you to add value. And I think that's where there's a mind shift that is happening, because I look in a lot of groups that I'm on. If an employer is saying you've got to be in the office 5 days a week, guys are saying I want a new job. I don't want to work in this place. I'm happy to be in the office a couple days a week, but I don't want to go back to a mandated 9 to 5 days a week in the office, because I'm finding that I can a better balance. And I think this is a key thing. Work is part of your life. It's not a work-life balance. Work is part of your life, and you're jeopardizing your family and all the rest of it, which is really what your legacy is in the end, not the work as you did necessarily. And I think it's got to work a bit differently.
Yeah. No, I totally think that's the right way to think about it. I was watching something and they were talking about, I think it was in Denmark, the nation that ranks on the top of the happiness scale every year. And the way that people self-identify there, if you ask someone in the US about themselves, one of the first 2 or 3 things they'll probably tell you about is what they do for work, if not the first thing. But in Denmark, it's like, oh yeah, I like to paint. I'm a parent. I have 2 dogs. I love to eat baguettes, and like the 10 things down the list, they might tell you that they're an accountant or whatever, but it's not as ingrained into who they are. Which if you take their happiness ranking and I think that could definitely be part of it. Obviously life is full of so many things besides just working. A lot of those things do add, the richness and the meaning and that legacy. Yeah.
And I should probably, to your point, there's more to life than working, but I should probably care that my mention of working is not just work, like a job that I get paid for. It's all the things that I do. That is to put some sort of output there. So it's recording the podcast with you. It's networking with people. It's working on that book that I one day will write or publish at least. It's studying. It's those things that are brain work. That's probably what I mean more than anything else. And being able to do that anywhere, anytime, which is a mind shift. So we go away for the weekend. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and everyone else is sleeping. And I might watch a series, I might read a book, or I might work on something. But having that flexibility and that freedom to take it on and do it is the mind shift I think everyone should have to an extent. So that's the nomad lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to keep talking about this in future episodes. Super interesting,
super good.
Relevant topic, I think. Yeah. Cool.
It's interesting because it's coming up with friends and that, even general conversation, that they are leaning towards, even talk about this trip to Maputo tomorrow. Well, my friend was supposed to go on. She didn't go because of a COVID test, but that's a separate issue. That's more all these false positives that people are getting. But we were talking about how I used to travel quite a lot as a consultant. And I said the one regret that I have on that is I didn't take one extra day, because you're always like, I've got to get there, I've got to get back, I've got to go do the sales thing, I've got to come back. But spending one extra day, and be it go playing a game of golf there, or going out to a local, whatever, going to see something there local, those are wasted opportunities. Because the world is diverse. There's so much to see and so much to learn, and you got to take those opportunities. Because now you can't without a vaccine passport.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, I think this, the pandemic has created a lot of mind shifts, and just, it's an eye opener for sure. A lot of things we took for granted that you maybe would have put off, people don't want to put off anymore, because, you never know what's going to happen. So you might as well, do the things you want to do now instead of putting them off for later.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you mustn't work for the company you work for. You're still got to put the results out. But if those results, whether they take you 40 hours in a week or 60 hours in a week or 20 hours in a week, you still got to commit to delivering. And I do it now where, if I have I don't say a light week, but if I work on a Saturday and a little bit on a Sunday, because I've got the inspiration to do something, I don't consider that extra work that I need to be paid extra overtime for. It just makes my week the next week a bit lighter. In the same token, if I want to go and watch my daughter swimming, I go watch her swimming, and I don't feel bad about it because I know that I've worked weekends and late nights, and I've chosen how I want to work, and the results are there. So I think it's time to end.
Yeah, should wrap up there for today.
Super. Thanks, Heather.
All right,
speak
talk
to you
later.
soon.
Okay,
Cheers.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Heather Bicknell is our producer and editor. Thank you, Heather, for your hard work on this episode. Please subscribe to the series and rate us on iTunes or the Google Play Store. Follow us on Twitter at the DWW Podcast. The show notes and transcripts will be available on the website www.digitalworkspace.works. Please also visit our website www.digitalworkspace.works and subscribe to our newsletter. And lastly, if you found this episode useful, please share with your friends or colleagues.